Hello, I'm here with Tony Crolla, founder of the Vittoria Group, and we're here to talk about his journey building the business. When you're building the business and how it kind of gave you the fundamentals for making the group as it is, were you supported or didn't have that support? How did you kind of learn the resilience to get through the journey?
Yeah, thanks very much, John. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast. Hopefully you find it interesting and you can hear my voice. I've had a bit of the cold the last couple of days, but I've stocked up on the Beechams this morning. Good question. Way back, how did it start? Support, instinctively my reply would be non-existent, because I think we were all not mentally self-aware of mental health and how individuals maybe need support. I don't think I was. I grew up classic family business, immigrant family. My father and mother came over in 67, had some jobs. I was born in 68, 1970. They started the original Vittoria and Leith Walk in Edinburgh. I was working there maybe, honestly speaking, maybe late 70s, early 80s, shall we say, probably 12, 13 years old properly, when I'd always been in the restaurant, the cafe, but properly working there. Yeah, and I think he just got on with it. Dad was firm, but always fair. He was never treated badly, was always good. But I was conscious that, this is a struggle and it's hard work and it's day by day commitment, and there was nothing like it is today for our family, for our children and grandchildren, where as much as they have their challenges, of course, and if they were to speak, maybe they would say, well, no, we're challenged mentally as well. But I got on with it. I had school as well, and school was never easy, the usual school stuff, day-to-day anxiety with school. But if I was to say to you, did I enjoy everything? Yeah, no regrets. I think it made me who I am, knowing that, it was down to me and my inner self had to get on with working out what to do over the piece, until late teens, early 20s. I got married at 22, so by then I'd become the origins of what I've become today, so to say.
Yeah. And when you were, during your childhood, working in the restaurant, did you kind of did it kind of give you the groundings, understanding restaurant and hospitality, the culture around it, and how to when you created it and building your own with the Vittoria Group?
I think Mum and Dad were good operators. I remember them innovating, changing things. They cared. My father went to great lengths to buy various products and food and wine for that era. Remember the gatos he used to buy. He used to go and visit somebody to buy Black Forest gato, and he cared. And I noticed these things. That I was also encouraged. With friends, I used to eat out a bit. Late 80s, early 90s, and I used to naturally be drawn into good restaurants and again, good operators. I could see there was leadership in these restaurants. I do have that mental note in my mind that a good business was always run by maybe a strong personality, someone who's maybe deep down a creative person, not afraid to change things, and maybe that visibility to these sort of things shape my mind. That, opportunities are always there and there's always an element of change needed to get to where you want to be for that business to then create the joy you want out of it.
Yeah. So when you took over the Vittoria Group from your family, did you have kind of like a worry or fear or kind of a risk aversion, kind of like the idea of having to change something because you're now in charge of it? It was what they built, and you kind of like fear of going, well, if I change it, how will it impact them? Or was you kind of like, well, this is me in charge?
I was never reckless. I do remember I think things through. Even today, I think things through. I'll go over it before it even comes out, and I maybe share it with somebody else, of which I like to share ideas and bounce things off. my trusted advisors, the family, my sons especially, my wife Angela. But I do think about things deep down. I go through the numbers. As much as I work with feelings and instinct, I do revert back to fact and market research and that. So when I have made changes to our business or expanded, I would reckon I've done my homework. And that's something I've done from the early days. I had a strategy and a way of doing things. But it is a lonely place being the owner. If you don't act, you're someone to blame. If you act too much, you're someone who takes too many risks. So, touch wood, I've maybe been fortunate, and I would say I've an unblemished record. No, maybe things could have been better. Investments maybe could have paid off quicker, but they just didn't. And now that I'm 57, I'm sitting here in this lovely restaurant with you in Divino, in the heart of Edinburgh's Old Town. Regrets? No, none at all. So the learning I have is that sometimes maybe the mistakes, the scars are what makes you. It gives you that experience to give to my children, to my wife, to other people around me. And maybe I realise I'm maybe a bit of a role model for other people. But it can be a lonely place being the main leader in a business, and but I'm doing my very best, my damn best, to delegate more as we come to that crossroads of maybe me giving up. And we have, to a degree. I've given up the sort of hospitality side of the business since 2020. My sons now run that. But as a parent, I always feel very responsible that they're my sons. They're not business partners. But at our level, they are business partners, and we need to run a business professionally with responsibility and take all the challenges that comes with it. But as the two directors are my children, as a father, I think, have I given them too much to handle or too much responsibility too early? But it's what made me, because my father gave me the responsibility quite quick, which I think benefited me. As much as maybe at the time it was a lot, to just get on with it, I learned through learning the ropes. And I think leadership is learned. Learned the hard way as well. It's not learned. I don't think it's learned in the textbook to say. The theory is so much, but it's the school of knocks, the setbacks, and how you adjust and pivot back and go again. There's great opportunity.
So what would be the scars? You're talking about scars earlier and mistakes. So what were those sort of ones you look back at and you go, they're really good learning lessons that I then passed on to my sons?
The fuck-ups, the letdowns, the people you could trust that maybe didn't quite deliver, but at the same token, maybe I didn't deliver for them. Relationships don't work sometimes in business. Investments that maybe we made that didn't pay off as quick, which put ourselves under pressure. It's easy to look at everything now, but it's been a hard, long road. It's taken half a century and a 35-year career of mine. 20 years of my father, 35 of mine, and my sons now, they've been at the game for 5 years on their own. And, it's a long road. And the scars, it's the sleepless. People don't see the hard knocks, the tough time, the sleepless nights, the drives home, that distraction in the back of your mind. I do realise maybe when my family speak to me, I'm maybe a bit distracted. That's because I'm always responsible to a degree, 24 hours of the day. Going to bed at night, you're always responsible. The restaurants are closing up. Is everyone going to be safe? Is anybody going to get hurt? There's always an element of risk, fire, intruder. There's always a responsibility. You never get off the train.
Yeah, and so when it came to the financial crash in 2008, how did you kind of deal with that then?
Well, fun enough, I was with the Bank of Scotland, and I was in a good place with them because the debt that I had with Bank of Scotland was at a cheap rate, and maybe in the macro economy it was all hell had broken loose. But I think central Edinburgh and our business, I think the ability for most people to go out for a meal to feel better is a low entry level gratification. So we did okay. You know, I don't think I overanalyzed it. Were we doing well in the financial crash?
Yeah.
I think we just got on with it.
Yeah.
And maybe if I do have time, I should look back at 35 financial years and see there'll probably be a dip then, but I just haven't noticed it because over the piece we are where we are.
Yeah.
It's been a long-term gain as opposed to that 1 year loss. I can't remember it.
That was fine.
I should go back and look at 2008.
It would be interesting to see, you know, because of it's that sort of you'd be able to look back and probably say, so I kind of worked on this and I just focused on it. So what were you focusing on that kind of when you came to that sort of decision that you didn't?
Well, good hospitality is underpinned. Our business is underpinned by good hospitality. It goes to the simple stuff. Being present in the restaurant, making sure the food comes out fresh, hot, and cooked. That's what you endeavour to do every day. And to make people feel better. Service and hospitality is that. So I think maybe we just stuck to the fundamentals and just got there. We worked hard. We put a hell of a lot of hours. Me and my wife and my children when they were young, and my parents still helped out. It has been, you know, it's been a long, long road, but the fundamentals are, you know, you do the simple things consistently, so people they can have trust in us and keep coming back. I'm young enough to know and old enough to remember how many places are no longer with us. I think, wow, interesting how they were the place to go and then they've gone. Why is that?
Exactly. That's
why
it's
is
an
that?
interesting
Did they
question.
take their eye off the ball? Did they run out of steam? Was that a succession? Were they undercapitalized? Were they dysfunctional? Did they just eat the end of their life in trend? I don't know. But you know, the whole mental health thing, leaders are exposed to a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
stress.
So when it kind of came to these sort of pressures, how did you kind of deal with them?
At the moment, I'm in a good place physically, but there have been moments where I've put on a hell of a lot of weight. And I think that's how I put myself, you know, through. You know, I would eat and drink a bit more and eat a bit more and then eat again and forget that I'd eaten and put on a lot of weight. I could easily put on 10, 15 kilos, 20 kilos over the course of a year or two. And I think they were, if I look back at my photographs, they were linked to moments of pressure and stress and anxiety where I was never a gym person or a walker or listening to podcasts because I don't think they existed way back. But not that I wasn't aware of that. But I think eating, just general relaxing, going home and having something to eat, that was my safety valve of, but then I would suffer because I wasn't fit, it would apply more pressure. So being physically fit helps mental fitness. There's no doubt about it.
Looking back at at your career going through the building of Victoria, do you have like sort of early warning signs to kind of before when you look back at those sort of mistakes or risks or fuck ups you called it? Did you kind of see these early warning signs that because you're so stressed you just missed them?
Did I sense warning, as in the business was under pressure or things weren't quite right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was conscious of them. Did I act with skill? Sometimes I didn't, and maybe just hope that things would just fix themselves out. And that's a learning that came with experience, that we have the ability to turn the dials and fix things quite quickly. There's no need for ignoring it. You can turn things around very simply. Cash, of course, it's the blood of the business, you know, cash flow. But occasionally when you expand and put more money behind it, and maybe some people would say that's unnecessary, but we'd always have good equipment, good fit out, that would put pressure on cash, you know, so that must have created anxiety for me and maybe the people around me. But I just got on with it myself. I don't think it was anybody else's problem. It tended to be mine. I wouldn't share the anxiety very well.
But is that something you do now when you're kind of, after learning it, you're kind of going, actually, I should have shared it back then, so I wasn't alone, because it's my family business and I'm with family, so there are people I
I
can
think
trust.
I share about it more now. I think I definitely do, because the boys are more involved and it is their responsibility to be. I'm the sort of de facto financial controller of the family. So the overarching umbrella of the whole business, the investment side, the property, and the restaurant group. So, but they're up to. But technology's helped a lot. You know, I mean, half the time you didn't know. You had to wait for a bank statement to come in for you to know what was going on. Now it's on your phone, it's on your PC. You've got so much great management data that there's no excuse unless you choose to ignore it. But people find other things to take up their time. You know, when they start having payback, they get involved in other things. Well, we tended to have very little payback and go again, reinvest. But I observe other people, you know, a business can quickly become a lifestyle thing. And that lifestyle then affects the business because they're not present anymore. They need money to live the lifestyle. That can create other stresses to the family. I see that a lot. I see that in dysfunctional businesses where, you know, they become lifestyle businesses too quick. You know.
And then how did you kind of avoid that? So you become still in hospitality, still kind of a lifestyle, but you know you're managing the balance, so you're not going too far to one side.
Between 2000 and maybe 2014, 15, that good 15-year stretch, I think we had the head down. We worked hard. We had a little bar of chocolate sometimes. We'd have a nice holiday or something like that. But basically it was day to day. It was long days, you know, up early, late at night, back home. We were at the coalface. I think that drive pushed us to get to the other side of the road. You know, that just constant focus. You know, but I'm not saying that it was easy. The back of your mind, all the challenges, but at the moment I only remember what I remember.
Yeah.
So, but maybe at the time it was stressful. It was anxiety. There was pressure. Maybe here we go again. There's going to be another almighty fiasco. But, you know, staff sometimes have left. I mean, I've been blessed. I've got a great team around me who have been with us for years, the bulk of them. Marvellous team. I owe them a lot. But occasionally you feel let down by people or, you know, suppliers or things happen. COVID was a classic case, you know. You are very exposed. You know, we were in hospitality. The government's telling us to close the doors. That was a difficult period. But, you know, head down, we dealt with what we could control and, you know, we just had to get on with it. Nothing else we could do.
So what did you do during COVID to kind of keep the business afloat and manage those stresses?
Buckled down. We had a good office team. They got on with sort of dealing with staff. I checked in with them. They checked in with the team. So did my sons. You just had to feed the suppliers with what you could. You know, manage expectations and understand that you were going to get out of this eventually. I think if you got in your mind that this is the end, no, we always knew it's a matter of time. It's when we reopen. But you still had to get on with the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And there was sometimes you would enjoy it because you were at home. Who doesn't enjoy just being at home? But that was a big challenge. Knowing when we're reopening, there were crazy times.
Yeah.
I can look back at it now and say, oh, we've survived and that was easy and we could do it again. But at the time, it was tough. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So did you ever take like the bounce back loans or anything, or because you had your business and you've sorted out your investments, you didn't need to?
No, it was fine. We spent the money that we had. We were offered big funding from the banks. We didn't take that. Didn't need that. But it was tough. It was tough. You know, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
If I remember back, there was uncertainty in the air all the time. But it was in your mind. It wasn't in everybody else's. Yeah. I had to deal with it because it was my baby to deal with. But what can I say, John? We got on with it. And we are where we are now. So everything must have worked. We must have played our cards correctly.
Yeah. So when it comes to like the personal toll of the on that, was there kind of like because of your sons are probably now involved by then, was it kind of, that you had to kind of manage it, and then because of your sons, it's kind of like you don't see them as business partners. How do you kind of manage that relationship when it comes to like these sort of stresses, periods, because you can't treat them as sons all the time when it comes to the business?
How do you manage? I think you just have to. Communication. The boys have grown up in the business, so they know what it's like. When they were children, I was at work. They understood that Dad was at work, working for them. I missed out on a lot, probably the stuff that most fathers now would want to deal with. But I was who I was, got on with it. How do we manage the stress now? Well, its expectations are set, we're clear. I think we communicate very often. Technology has helped that. We try and sit down once a week for a management meeting that becomes a family meeting as well. Mental health and their ability to cope with it, because I'm 57 and I can speak like a 57-year-old. They're in their 30s. They only know what they know. Yeah, and it's a different mindset, probably. Different experience, definitely. And different ability, because I think a lot of your skills come from time. I wish I knew now what then.
Yeah.
What I know now, I wish I knew then.
So when you were going through this, did you ever kind of experience or like a burnout, or like kind of led to like decisions, and you're going, and it had this personal toll?
Yeah. There was a time, early 2000s, I hurt my back. It was diagnosed as a double hernia in my lower disc. And I was still working with that pain, and just by chance, or I deserved that luck, I discovered a bit of executive coaching, shall we call it, and I paid for it and learnt new skills in delegations and systems and processes, which were now maybe seems pretty normal. How could you not have them? But I didn't do an MBA or did further education, so I just knew what I knew, and I had what I had. But that was very, very good for me. That health problem almost set me up for the next stretch, that next decade of delegating, having management, me becoming sort of managing director of a larger business from one restaurant to 2 to 3 quite quick. Systems, reporting, but technology was coming on the scene back then. That was 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, that period then. The internet was coming, so you were able to communicate quicker. I was having to do less myself, because up to then I was doing everything, all the ordering, all the payroll stuff, paying for bills, going to the cash and carry, this, that. It was through that system, which was called Action Coach, which is still out and about just now. Still a great thing. If anybody wants to invest, they must invest in themselves, first of all. And plugging that experience in helped me a lot to the next level. And then again, you almost go through a run of growth, and then you hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, this is not as enjoyable. You get a bit of payback, you upgrade a lot of things in your life, and then again you're feeling a bit anxious and thinking, yeah, to the outside world you're doing very well, but why is it I'm not happy? Because maybe there is too much going on. But then you reset again. And I did another burst of executive coaching, this time with Shirlaw's, Fergus King in Edinburgh. Shout out to him. He helped me a lot. And it's again, these people are not cheap, but it's an investment. It's a balance sheet investment as opposed to a P&L investment. But the payback is huge, because I think that second stint of growth for me, as I became from managing director to more a leader of a business. But it was the anxiety and the unknown, the uncertainty, which drove me to that. I looked for answers. Maybe that's been a skill of mine, that when I've been a bit under pressure, I'll look for an answer.
What was that? And do you think that was
I'll
kind of
read,
like...
I'll look, I'll learn, I'll view,
Yeah.
I'll talk to find an answer.
And do you think now that desire to learn was kind of helped you get through these difficult times? Because instead of, being by yourself and going, all right, I can figure it out, you went, actually, I need an external view to get me
Yeah.
to look at my business because I'm too inside the business. I need to kind of look out
Yeah.
the business.
That was on my radar. Was that lucky? Because maybe not for everybody. They speak about external help and they'll say you're just talking gibberish. Is that a sign of weakness for a lot of people? They say, if I need external help, that's because I'm weak. But my answer to that would be, but surely the top sportsmen in the world all have coaches who are not world-class athletes, but that little bit of group input from dietitians, nutritionists in a sporting scenario. But in my end, it's lawyers, accountants, management structure, frameworks that could take a business so you're not stuck inside that rut. You can suddenly look above the clouds and say, this is a company, I'm just part of that business. I happen to be the shareholder of it, but I'm part of a bigger thing. I always remember that came to me. I thought, I'm maybe this is mine, but it's part of everybody as well. Our supply chain are stakeholders, our guests are stakeholders, our staff are very much stakeholders. And I almost enjoy the fact that we're a group of people who are doing their best in different functions within that entity, that economy. And I found that bit was beneficial. And I grew more. But maybe my personality helped it grow more. I have no idea, John.
It's an incredible way of thinking because it's like you reframed, what exactly is going on. You're in the too much probably, I guess the expression would be in the business, and then it kind of made you go out of the business. What can you change? So, you're instead of you doing the cash and carry, doing everything, it kind of delegation that you managed to do.
Delegated, yeah. Maybe I had something inside me that told me to do that. I had no idea, but I did it rather than procrastinate and not do it. I went for it, I invested, spent the money. And that got me to level 2. And my mindset is always primed for opportunity now because I've done the learning, and I've got the real life experiences. I've also been fortunate as well. It doesn't always get hospitality is a very variable business. You can make a small fortune if you start with a big fortune, they always say, and a lot of restaurants do close or are unsuccessful, or if you did open the bonnet, they maybe look successful, but they're not. They're built on sand, or they're not capitalised well over a long timepiece. And we've had our ups and downs, but we've been fine. We've survived.
Yeah. What would you say, looking back, all the peaks and troughs that you had, what would you say was probably the year that you're kind of going, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Did you ever kind of get to that point? It was so stressful. You kind of just felt like just quit.
If I had that moment, it was probably around about 2015, 16. We had expanded the business quite a bit, more employees, but I was maybe underskilled for running a business of that size. And it was thanks to an honest conversation with somebody, and that goes back to that mental health problem. Have that conversation with somebody you can trust, and weirdly, the nugget then comes to you. That bit of information, you think, oh, maybe I should take up, and I get that number sent to me. But then it's up to you, the individual, to phone that telephone number. No, you can have a bottle of wine, and you think that'll just, forget everything, but you've got to take action for yourself and be in the mindset to take action. But probably 2013, 14, 15, the business had expanded, lots of new people in the business, but I felt a little bit, I had an instinct that things weren't right, but I wasn't able to articulate it or take control of the situation. So I felt under pressure mentally. But thankfully I found Charles, Fergus King, who was recommended to me. That turned me into more of a leader, to take a further step back and look at myself from a bit of a distance and see where I was going wrong and to make some decisions to tidy up a bit.
So what would you say when you're looking back at it would be your mistakes or fuck-ups that you made that you're kind of going, I shouldn't have done that? You're kind of looking at it going, because you were too involved.
Well, I don't want to name individual scenarios or name people.
You don't need to. It's just talk general.
I just think there were those scenarios, but looking back now, it's what made me.
Yeah.
Oddly, those scenarios, those bad moments, fuck ups, we'll call them that today. they are what made me today, and that experience is worth a lot. Making a mistake or underestimating something or underfunding something and then repairing it, certainly you won't make the same mistake twice. And I think every business person, like every sports team, has to have a bad run and then understand why they're having a bad run and then learn from it.
Yeah.
I think that's fundamental.
So if you could go back to the day before, like any sort of fuck ups or one of your major ones, what sort of advice did you give yourself?
It's a good question. If I went to the day before, but the thing is, you don't know what you don't know, John.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly go back to a moment. But at that time, we went in with 110%. You have to. Not all. We always tend to relate to success by how much money you make.
Yeah.
But oddly, starting a successful business, you can never say it's just about the money I'm going to make. That's how I'll be deemed successful. It's about the build and the product and the service you're offering. The financial success is the result, is the outcome. So at the beginning, you're always trying to say, I'm going to make the best of this restaurant or the best of this food, etc. But what then comes up by not doing it correctly is financial uncertainty. And we always think, well, but then it wasn't the financial uncertainty at the beginning that made the mess. It was the fundamental, the team, the offer, the service, the product, the location, the type of business we were trying to run that created the outcome of the financial uncertainty. Because normally it is always a financial mess, which puts you under pressure. Because if you had no financial uncertainty, everything would be great.
Anyone could run a business.
Funny how every outcome tends to be financial success. But the source of every financial successful outcome is the ability to select a location or product or service, and then the team that's going to execute that, getting that right. But normally what happens is you go in 110% and you believe what you see. You go in with best intention and best endeavour. But then when it doesn't work, it's a financial mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't tend to go back to source and say, we employed the wrong chef. It was the wrong location. There was far too many Italian restaurants. That product was weak. It was difficult to control. We were spread out too thin. You never go back to that. You just deal with the financial mess after.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you can never really say there's too many Italian restaurants because there are too many. But each restaurant, each business, they have their own way of dealing with it. So you're not really competing. It's more you're just doing your own thing. Was there kind of a moment when you kind of looked back and going, or did you always kind of see yourself as not competing with the restaurants? Or did you, at one point when you were building it, you kind of thought you were competing and then you realized you had to change it for that mentality?
I think you need to be aware of the market around you. But once you've got it in your mind that you want to expand and grow and you have a location that has an opportunity, I think you tend to go for it. There's always opportunity. I have an email sent to me every morning from an organisation. It's like the hospitality news. And it's fascinating because it splits us out into different stories, articles, and we're definitely all in the same storm, but everybody's in a different boat because some restaurants are closing down, it's doom and gloom and blame the government and it's tax and it's rates and it's VAT and it's Brexit and it's energy cost. But then in the same newsletter, there's an announcement that someone's going to try and open 100 restaurants in the next 5 years across Europe, or 100 pubs in the UK. You think, are these in two different silos? But they're in the same market.
Yeah.
They're all in hospitality. It's funny how they're talking about expansion and these people here are talking about closing down, and you've got to be conscious of that. There are opportunities around all the time. You know, you just need to select the right one.
Yeah. When would you ever expand into Europe, or that's not really?
Into Europe, we've not expanded outside Edinburgh.
Well, that's what I'm meaning as well. Would you, or would you kind of
I
happy
don't
with
know. I was asked recently
we're talking
about
expansion.
what we were talking about that with somebody who's done that before, just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, once you've done one, it's amazing how easy it becomes. It's just an appetite, and opening in a place like London, it opens your eyes to a big market. There are thousands and thousands of diners every single day. And something new is always attractive. And I said, yeah, but something new becomes old very quickly in London. Everybody goes to the new place on Instagram and the internet. People get a press release, they're out to the new restaurant. So you spend a lot of money to make a little money. You know, I'm speaking like a 57-year-old again. Say,
it's fine. It's experience.
You know, you say, why would you go again? But opportunities do come up. And I think my son's, you know, at the moment we're running a nice business in Edinburgh and everything's fine. You know, we've got a couple of opportunities on the horizon, but there's certainly Edinburgh ideas. But at the moment, outside the city, maybe I'll leave that to them.
Fair enough. And when you kind of looking at opportunities and stuff, how do you kind of apply your teachings or your learnings to your children so they can learn from what you've learned so they don't make those mistakes?
The way I do that now, recently, it's almost like a criteria, a tick box. You know, it has to satisfy 4 or 5 hurdles before you commit. If it doesn't, it's better to say no. You get more pleasure. It's not an ego trip. You have to avoid the pitfalls of saying, I'm just expanding a business because it will massage my ego. Because then you've got to deal with the fallout. And your family could suffer, your children can suffer. But we now have a sort of criteria. My son's opened a restaurant last year just in the Royal Mile in the corner there. You know, it came out of the blue. We just quickly reverted to that. It was not even written down our checklist. We just memorised it. And we just said, does it do that? Yep. That? Yep. Do it. And it's been open nearly a year now, a year in December. And it's done very well for year one. Brilliant.
And it shows you how the systems that you put in and your learnings has actually helped them grow because then they've
taken 35 years, John.
35
taken
years.
a long time.
You know, but they've obviously learned from one of the best.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. And I take that as a compliment. One of the best. You know, I don't know. I'm only relative to the next successful businessman, you know.
Yeah.
I admire people out there, industry legends, who I think, oof, they've done very well. But I'm in my own little world, and I'm looking after my business.
Yeah. It must be, you know, difficult when you have these challenges like tourist tax or VAT rises, and it all like more increase in tax. You're kind of going, but then you, as you're talking about, you have that mentality. Some people see it as a challenge, and some people just get on with it. So every time, you know, there's like a new thing that's impacting hospitality, how do you kind of just get on and deal with it?
Yeah, what you've picked up on is that there is more and more cost being given to that business model. In the cold light of day, if you just look at it as a pizza, for argument's sake, you know, there are more slices getting put into that pizza, but the pizza's not getting bigger. You know, there's not necessarily the growth is not going at a faster rate than the cost is increasing. So then it comes to a point where if you do have the ability to stand back and say, why am I doing this for? Is it just to pass the time, keep ourselves busy? You know, and the customer ends up, the more the government puts cost in, unfortunately, the customer ends up paying more. You know, I noticed this the other day, there was a breakdown, a bottle of gin. I mean, there's about £14 of tax. And you know, what a bottle of gin costs, you know, most of it is tax. Where does all this money go? So in businesses, once you've committed, look at the stress it's coming about. So you've got to charge correctly. And there's a lot of places that are undercharging so they could do the volume. But you're not running a Tesco's if you're just running a bar or restaurant. You know, the money, it doesn't stack up. You run out of steam very quickly. And then I think you have to give a good service and charge appropriately. So if not, it'll come undone. And we certainly, since COVID, you know, rates have went up, national insurance, corporation taxes went up. So what profit was there has been dissipated very quickly. So we can't reinvest as quick as we used to, you know.
Yeah.
So what you find is that some businesses will just sit there. Maybe there'll be a correction in the market again. Some will fall. You know, the ones that have expanded too much. You know, I think you've got to be very careful. It's easy to spend other people's money, the banks or other investors. You have to make thoughtful decisions. But I can say that now because
You've already done it.
I've done okay. I've been round the block. I've seen it all to a degree. I've seen other businesses come and go, and some have been very successful. I said, what was their magic sauce? Leadership, good structure, well capitalized, good management information, the right employees, because the mental health part comes from the lack of information.
And did you, and this is kind of a two-part question, but did you ever kind of have that when you were building, you know, the group, that sort of ego trip, like having that sort of like hero complex, you're building it, or did you not? And then if you did, you know, do you think that's kind of part of like the way, the culture around it is like the competition, and then, you know, or do you think it was more of the systems in place?
Maybe I didn't realise. I expanded a business, it was just my ability and my ambition. There was opportunities that came in front of my eyeballs, and I went for them. I didn't do it to please somebody else. I did it to please myself. I gamified it to a degree where I thought, this will be another challenge, we can do it. And I've got the people around me that can deliver the project at all levels. So from advisors and funding to good chefs around me and good management, and my sons and wife, they were there as well. Yeah, maybe had I been exposed and on my own, a bit more difficult. But I had a very good team around me.
So you had a good team that kind of grounded you.
Great. I think they propelled me, but at the same time gave me that reality check, you know, that every day without me realising.
Yeah. And you think that's like a sort of thing, you know, because of, you know, maybe before you talked about it, there's that sort of issue you might have had that because you didn't talk about it, issues happen, so you created fuck-ups that you wouldn't have done, but because you're now talking about it, you don't really have those fuck-ups as much.
Yeah, you didn't realise you were making them at the time. Definitely not. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's like punditry on TV.
Yeah.
When you watch the football, it's easy to talk after the game, but you know, it's a challenge. Like every sector, there are challenges. You know, and I think most people become overcautious or risk averse due to a lack of information or advice, professional advice, qualified advice, and information. There's no excuse nowadays. You can get information on anything. Chat GDP it, Google it, whatever is right for you. YouTube it, you can learn. And if you don't want to learn, you will never earn. And the anxiety comes from, I think, from not applying yourself, doing the hard work, or being successful and being distracted, because the toys do come along. Distractions come along, which then can give other problems.
Yeah.
You know, in life, in lifestyle.
So when it came to sort of having sort of mental health, you know, you talked about it and how you dealt with it, but do you think, you know, it was partly a cultural thing, or is there like a systemic sort of issue? You know, we don't really talk enough about it, and because we don't, you know, business owners don't have that issue in the leadership, and if they did, there wouldn't be as many, you know, potentially, you would say, fuck-ups, because they have people to ground them and put them in, make sure it doesn't happen, because they're hearing other people's advice.
The successful ones that we remember have all that backup, but the unsuccessful ones will then have the problems, the mental health, the bankruptcy, the infidelity, the alcoholism, the drug abuse. It all comes from that lack of information and knowledge and support. And if you're on the level 1, I think you've got to arm yourself with all that. You can't go into battle exposed, knowing what we know now. I think 20 years ago, you didn't have half the battle. I think you went in shooting blanks. You had no idea what was going on. But then everybody else didn't know what was going on at the same time. So you could only fight who's up front, who's against you. So maybe I was in the right time at the right place, and the knowledge circle, everybody was in the same boat. There was very few high performers. So maybe now it's a more difficult market.
Yeah.
Private equity-backed businesses have got the data to avoid all the mess. But strong will, maybe that immigrant background as well, John, that fear of falling back, of failure. Italians, immigrants coming here, there is a thread through them, their DNA, where, you've come to this country, or any immigrant who doesn't want to go back, wants to be successful. You don't want to go back home and say, well, where have you been the last 20 years? Well, we had a business and then we lost it. Now we're back home. But you want to come back successful. And I think we Italians, but a lot of people who are proud and ambitious and who fight for their families will keep going. I think having a cause, having a good parents, moral compass, I think when you don't have the cause anymore, you start to make mistakes. But the mistakes bring the anxiety on. They bring that stress.
It's interesting. And so how did, these experiences kind of change your definition of success and failure?
At the time, there was certainly a punch in the nose. Oh God, why am I going to deal with this other problem? But they've shaped me to who I am today. It's easy for me to be in this room with you today.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the right place, physically, mentally. I've got 2 sons who are running the hospitality group, so a lot of the noisy stuff is being dealt with by them. Maybe ask them the same question. They go, oh, this is hard. But I'm 57 now, and I do have ambitions still. To go again. I've said it before on other podcasts or interviews where I'm uncomfortably comfortable. Yeah?
Yeah.
Where you think, I could really just coast this the next 10, 15 years and just sit back, but you are who you are.
Yeah.
And the thrill of going again and creating more, the third career.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one more book, another album, another tour. Oh, why not? It might keep me young.
It's interesting in a way that you think about it, but it's true.
It's not the money.
Well, no, if you're
Actually, we're going to spend money.
If you're in it for the money, you would have sold it by now, probably.
Sold it or beholden it.
Yeah.
But we are investors by definition.
So when you look back at your background, do you think that kind of created this idea that you didn't really have that fear of failure and risk aversion, or did you, because you have this sort of immigrant background you're talking about, you had always had the idea, if you failed, what's next? What's going to happen?
I didn't want ever to make a mess. Doesn't matter how high I reached, I was always fearful of falling down. Yeah, I would look at the cracks in the road. But I just kept going. When there was a setback, find a solution.
Yeah.
That's maybe mental strength, good support around me, a good wife, very, very good wife next to me. Maybe that helped because it got me through the barriers, those mental blocks, where some people then will turn to a distraction to support it. I got good advice. I had good accountants around me, good lawyers, multiple lawyers, multiple banks, multiple accountants. It wasn't just one. I never stuck. If I didn't get the answer there, I'd go somewhere else.
You make
So
sure
I
you
found that. That's the solution. I've been very lucky. Having lots of customers has been great as well, because those customers become guests who become friends. A friend to me, maybe I wasn't a friend to them, but you would end up chatting, and you've got to be aware of what's going on around you and saying, we're both mortals. They're doing well. They're happy. They're not as rich as me, but they're very happy. What have they found? They found support. They've got the right values. They're doing it for the right reasons. This whole idea of the game is just about how rich you become, that's just a lot of nonsense. That doesn't actually mean anything. Doesn't matter. I don't think they're even connected. Happiness and wealth and mental health. I don't think they're connected. Even though having money helps, because having no money can buy you a lot of stress, yeah, in a business or personally. So working hard is the quickest way to making money, to fix the stress. I would sign up for that argument. Forget all the woolly stuff. But I've been well supported through my guests, through my friends, family especially, my staff. I would say I've been one of the lucky ones.
So what would you do now instead of eating? You know, when you have the mental health, you're saying you change. So what do you do now?
If I had an absolute almighty fiasco to deal with,
Yeah.
I think I would still eat.
Still eat.
Or drink good wine. Plenty in this room.
Oh yeah, there is.
And I think during COVID, I did actually come down here a few times to see what was going on in my daily recce's round to make sure everything was safe and sound when they were all locked up. Because it does help. There's no doubt about it. A good meal and a glass of wine does relax you. I needed something. So hopefully this doesn't need to happen again, because I want to be healthy as my grandchildren. My oldest grandson, he's 7 years old today, and he's with his family today, and hopefully I'll see him tomorrow. They're out and about today, having fun, because it's October holidays. But, I'm conscious already of there's the next generation, and I'm fearful for him, because I say, will he grow up? Will he grow up healthy? Will he do well at school? Will he be bullied at school? Will he bully at school? Will he get into trouble? Will he fall in love? And, will he be comfortable when the reality is he's got everything? But you're always fearful. But then, as a businessman, you're thinking, we're going to finally give him, we're so precious of him, but then we're going to give him our business at the end of the day. He will inherit it. And that's like saying, and if it isn't a good business, you end up giving your own grandchildren or children a bomb. Say, that's how much I love you. I'm going to give something that's going to give you all this stress for the rest of your life. That's where succession and family planning is very important, because you love your children, but then for you to be happy, you give them your business. It's a great way. Yeah, I'm not going to sell it, I'll just give it to them. But if it's not being built for the future, you've actually given your children a bomb to deal with, which will lead to anxiety and fear and depression, financial problems, everything that you didn't want for yourself or for them as your children. And that's why my intent is always to make sure we don't fall, don't slip, and don't make the wrong investments. And we need to go a bit slow, organically grow, and just manage. But I can only say that today, John, because I've been round the block. I've been round the Monopoly board a few times.
But that's the thing, if you haven't been around the Monopoly board a few times, you probably wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have learned from those mistakes.
Correct.
So you would.
Yeah, but today I'm conscious of.
Yeah.
I want to leave a legacy that I give to my children, who will then give it to their children, who I all love. But I'm also conscious of the one thing that might give them a lot of stress in life is that business, when maybe they could go and do their own thing, and we just sell up or lease everything out, and they would just have derive an income from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But easy life, they just derive an income from it, and that could be that. But I don't know. My sons have came into business. My grandchildren, of course, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't want to take over the Vittoria Group. Whatever the Vittoria Group is in 20 years' time, 25 years' time. I don't know, and it's probably not up to me.
No.
It's up to everybody else, and they can make their own decisions.
No, it's an interesting one when you look at
This
succession.
podcast will be something they could Google one day and find it on the internet.
Hear their grandfather talking.
And listen to what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to get out of here alive.
Well, no.
No, we definitely not.
No. Yeah. So when you looked at talk about depression, did you ever actually have depression, and that's why you had the pizzas or the food that you ate or the wine, or is it more kind of that stress and anxiety, a fear of kind of leaving a bomb and seeing the business explode?
I've no idea if I've ever been depressed, suffer from anxiety, or overstressed. I have no idea.
Mm.
You know, you don't know. I think you don't know. But maybe I'm being naive. Maybe other people don't know. You would know if you were depressed. So maybe I haven't, with all respect to who has suffered from these conditions. But I don't think I have. I think I've got a strong personality. I've never took a tablet, touch wood, for anything. You know, and I know people who are younger than me who have done that.
Mm.
But have they just surrendered? And then the tablet or the vino has been the outlet.
Mm.
Maybe have they just kept going and not found a distraction? They might have just won that battle anyway.
It's an interesting the conversation, because the research is showing that 65% of Americans are suffering with burnout, around 55 in the UK. Mental health is recorded about 85%. That was like Mental Health UK or something. I can't remember. I need to look it up. But there was the research is showing that it's a big issue because not people they talk about it, or there isn't like that support network.
I think my DNA, coupled with my personality of the ambition, has carried me to not fall into a void. Yeah. But I think all of us have a stock market price daily. Yeah, we must have but we just don't measure it. Yeah, we're not looking at a stock market price of each individual.
Yeah.
But there'll be days where you're just a bit shitty.
Yeah.
I've got a touch of the flu, yeah, but the largy they call it. I still got out of bed this morning, get on with it, and I might go home a bit earlier today because I'm not going to have some nice soup that my wife's going to make, I'm sure. But we all have dips. But stock markets have depressions, and human beings have them as well. It's how do they bounce up we should focus on, maybe not how do we go down.
Yeah.
How do we stay up? And that involves the physical activity, good family networks, and even eating well, drinking well, resting, recovering. But I'm sure all of us have bad days. I'm sure even Jeff Bezos has bad days where he wakes up and goes, this is further enough of all this nonsense.
Yeah.
You might even have it just for an hour or two. Even Donald Trump must have bad days. Yeah, and or somebody who's never done anything in their lives. Children, who have even started on the journey will have bad days. I think, but we should look at the long-term stock price as opposed to the daily stock price, like you would with an asset. And I think all of us should be thankful, and that's what maybe we don't do enough. We're actually very lucky to be where we are.
Yeah.
To be warm, safe, fed, and loved. Most of us in this society are in that position. But I think nowadays we always look at what's online and we could be better, and someone's doing better than me, and young people especially. It's a lot of rubbish. If they're listening to this, it's absolute rubbish. Just worry about yourself.
It's
Take the long-term view, not the daily stock price view.
It's an incredible way to reframe the building of the businesses and the journey, because it's that getting out of that daily thinking of, okay, it's not going well today. Will it go well tomorrow? It's like, okay, this business isn't going to be here tomorrow. I should be thinking, what's going to make it be here for next year?
Long term, yeah, it's a 5 to 10 year projection. Yeah, we're not interested in what we're going to make this weekend. It's what you make this season, this year. Yeah, we don't look back too much at the numbers. It is what it is.
Yeah,
just keep going. You will get there. And I think a lot of people are maybe too analytical on themselves, and then the head goes down.
So when you look at your career as a business leader, What's the main advice that you'd kind of give to people building a business, and so they kind of avoid the pitfalls that you've had or the issues that you when you're struggling you wish that you didn't have?
Keep learning. No doubt about it. Keep learning. Self-development, personal development, trying to stay fit and healthy helps that. But be curious. Ask questions. Stop making statements. The more experience you get, leaders tend to make more statements. They'll give you the answer. What you have to try and learn, and what I've tried to learn is, rather than tell people what to do, I'll ask a question. And that came from the coaching and from the learning. So I'll ask a question when maybe others will just make a statement. They'll just tell them what to do or what they think. And that's how you almost like deflect the noise and get other people to grow and get on with it. So you share a bit of the weight. Leadership is about that.
So it kind of goes back to that old adage of the smartest person in the room is the one who listens instead of talks.
Yeah. Easier said than done.
Yes.
But yeah, and maybe even setting yourself up as I'm the most stupid person in the room before you enter the room. And say, I'll just listen to everybody rather than just hear the sound of my own voice. But that's a skill, John. It's hard to learn. I'm sure a lot of the meetings that I've had in the past, it's been the Tony Crolla show and everybody's just listened. Because they're obviously maybe doing what you've just said. We'll just listen and not stick our neck out. But I've always held the agenda, held the vision, and got to where I've got.
And just to end this, when you look back in career, do you have like an artifact or something, like building Vittoria, that you still have that kind of reminds you of the journey? Do you have something you kind of look back to and go, those were the days?
In my office at home, I've got a box, my archive box, and a few of them are framed and put up, and pictures and photographs. But there's one that I always look at and I thought, that was when the trajectory went up the way. And it was a great review in the local paper, the Evening News, which back then these things were important. And it was a great review. The headline was "Feeding All Your Fantasies." And it was a local journalist who came into Vittoria's in Leith Walk and wrote a great review. And there's a picture of me and my wife. I'm dressed as a chef. She's got a waistcoat on. And I'm a bit bigger than what I am now. And I look at that picture and I think, that evening, that was a Friday night, that paper came out. I remember it was a sudden little trajectory of the business. It started to grow. So your cash flow became more positive. And I thought, that's a turning point. And when I've got that in my office, I look at that picture. I think,
Do you know what year that was?
it was 1996.
So that would be, you'd say that was the turning point. That was kind of.
I think the trajectory started to lift up. That was that little boost to the business. I just refurbished it that year. And I'm sure we'll probably have done okay anyway. I remember you've asked me, says, what's the artifact?
Yeah.
And of all the things I've got, I've had lots of awards and lots of photographs of things happening in our lives. But that one, when I look at it, resonates with me. I think that's the one I remember when the sales started to grow, more money came in, and then I redeployed that money into growing the business we have today, which has given the joy to thousands of customers, thousands of employees, and our family, and my sons, and my grandchildren. I thought, I wonder if that was that little spark.
And then, would you do it again? Same mistakes, everything, or would you change anything? Considering the learnings you've had.
If I had to choose a life, would I do this life again? If I had the choice, there might be other lives I could lead. But I'm very content with the life I've lived. The pain has helped as well. The tough times, the hard times. Relatively speaking, I've had an easy life. I don't want to get carried away. And there are people now in the world who've got worse times than me. But in my little world, there was difficult times. But we just kept going. And when you add time as an asset to anything, time fixes everything. Just give it time. I think it'll be okay. You'll sort yourself out. The darkest hour is always the one before sunrise.
It's a really good quote.
Very good quote.
It's a very good quote.
Finish the podcast.
Yeah.
The darkest hour is the one before sunrise. Always when you think, oh shit, sun comes up. Time. Just give it a wait time. Add 60 days, this business, this relationship. Give it 3 months. Give it a year. You must add the asset of time. Because I know you just make daft decisions today.
Yeah.
Just call it a day. Cheerio. Add time. Maybe 1 hour. I'll give this meal another 10 minutes before it comes. Give the chef another month. Give that business another year. Factoring to, I've even given our life 5-year slugs where, you know, you can add, say, where will we be in 5 years? If you can see yourself then, so what are we going to do in these next 5 years? 1, 2, 3 things. But I have the knowledge and the experience to say these sort of things.
It's an incredible way of dealing with like having 5-year slugs, because most people, the idea of looking into the future that far is quite terrifying.
Yeah, but I think if you can, you could and you should. Because you say, well, how old will I be in 5 years? Right. So if I'm exactly in the same place, will I be content? If you say, that's fine. But you are going to be 5 years older. So where do you want to travel to? Do you want to change job? Change career? Build more? Because if you add more content to your life, it will certainly travel better.
This is the Burnout Files. Thank you for listening and watching.